It is a means to summon us.
Who are you?
Explorers in the further regions of experience. Demons to some, angels to others.
It was a mistake!
You solved the box. We came. Now you must come with us. Taste our pleasures.
Please, go away and leave me alone.
Oh, no tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering.
It's a box. It's just a box. Thank God for men of reason.
No more games. We'll tear your soul apart.
Okay, the HELLRAISER panel, let's get this started with Mr. Doug Bradley. Next, Mr. Simon Bamford. Up next, Nicholas Vincent. Miss Barbie Water. And finally, Valentina Marks.
After what I've just seen. Just turn my microphone.
Testing.
All right, so we're sort of doing a little HELLRAISER legacy with feedback. So let's start off with sort of an easy one. What makes the Cenobite so popular?
Doug's voice. Doug's voice.
Doug's beautiful face.
Yes.
Yeah, Doc's beautiful face.
Dog's voice that makes the film so good. We should all talk like Shakespearean actors.
Have you seen Ian McKellen on acting with Ricky Gervais? It's hilarious. You can find it on YouTube. I only saw it the other day. It's wonderful. He's talking to Ricky Gervais about acting, about the process of acting, and he says, "You see, Peter Jackson came to me from New Zealand, and he said, so Ian, I would like you to play Gandalf, the wizard, in The Lord of the Rings." And I said to him, "Peter, are you aware that I am not, in fact, a wizard?" And he explained to me that he did understand this, that I would have to pretend to be a wizard. And how did I do this? Well, they gave me a script, which has got the words written down for me, so I know what I have to say. And how did I know where to stand? Somebody told me. And if you look at the arc of my method, my performance for Gandalf, it goes something like this. On set. Sir Ian, Sir Ian, Sir Ian, Sir Ian. Action. Wizard! No, you shall not pass! Cut! Sir Ian, Sir Ian, Sir Ian, Sir Ian. That's how it works. I am not, in fact, a Cenobite. We're not really helping you here, are we?
Can I answer?
Sure, you can.
The question was... the question was, why are the Cenobites so popular?
Yes.
And I think it's because they're a new type of monster invented by someone who's a genius called Clive Barker. And there hadn't been anything quite like them before. And also, you know, with monsters, like, well, there were a little bit of sex and vampires with Christopher Lee and stuff like that, but they're sort of pushing the envelope about sensuality and seeking the extremes of it. And you hadn't really seen quite that kind of thing in a movie before. I mean, you know, strike me down in flames if I'm wrong, but has there been has there been like really sexy, weird monsters like the Cenobites before? They're kind of...
No, obviously we were typecast as really sexy. They got the sexiest actors they could get. And then, but sadly they were all busy.
It's the leather costumes.
We were just wondering why Pinhead didn't want the Cenobites to get the power.
What? Say that again?
Why you didn't want the women Cenobites to get the power? We were too
You were always the big cheese.
Now steady on. No problem. I never picked a fight with the female Cenobite. I had a problem with you. A serious problem with you is you were a mere pretender. You were muscling in on my space. That was the issue. Yeah.
He's so territorial.
No.
You've been brooding on this for 20 years. I haven't seen Valentina for 20 years. More than 20
And doesn't she look fabulous?
I think mystery is where I always go. I mean, they turn up in the first movie in the scene you've just seen, and Kirsty, quite understandably, says, "Who are you?" And they explain that they're Cenobites, okay, and that they are explorers in the further regions of experience, and they're angels, the son, the demons one, which tells you absolutely nothing at all about them. And at the end of Hellraiser, you are actually none the wiser about who the Cenobites are, what the Cenobites are, why the Cenobites are, etc.
And nor were we when we filmed it.
And mystery is power, simply, and what's powerful and what we don't understand is what's scary.
Well, information is power as well, isn't it? So that's what bosses always, they never give you enough information because they know that if they give you too much information, they're giving you too much power.
Need to know basis.
Exactly.
You didn't really think that was going to be such a long answer.
No, I like the
And then I think also to echo
What's your question?
what Barbie was saying, the Cenobites are a significant part of the reason why Hellraiser doesn't age, I think, because the Cenobites are completely out of time. They, you might see them in a medieval print or a Renaissance painting, Temptation of Saint Anthony or something like that. See them in a contemporary horror film, but if you look at the Cenobites in 50 years or 100 years' time, they won't have dating. So although there's a degree of big hair and shoulder pads going on in Hellraiser that tells us we're in the 80s, the Cenobites don't date.
So, except maybe the ones in Hellraiser 3, the ones, because in 50 years' time there won't be CDs and there won't be cameras and things with Cenobites, so they will age a little bit.
Yes, but they were handmade. Pay attention next time.
As you might have noticed, I yearn for the days of big hair, and I try and keep it going.
Me too.
Yeah, me too.
So each of your characters in Hellraiser has a kind of a human backstory. The way
We can't see you because of the
I thought you were talking without moving your lips.
he's throwing his voice to me, and actually I'm his puppet. Your form in death kind of reflects what you were in life. So if each of you could kind of elaborate on your character's backstory and how you incorporated that on screen.
Nobody told us. Seriously, I wrote a short story called Look, See, which appeared in a magazine called Fear, to celebrate the launch of the second movie. As part of the publicity, where I just basically said, listen, it's all lies, I was never a child. Over the years, I've actually kind of the idea of a child growing up in hell is absolutely fascinating to me. But at the time, actually, it was just, got the script. What do you mean my face is not going to be seen after all of this? What do you mean I'm an 11-year-old boy? What? No idea. Never been explained
And
to
the
me.
same with me, they never told me what the backstory was. They just, one day they brought this slightly larger gentleman on stage with a bald head and said, "This is you out of makeup." I went, "Oh, okay, thanks." That was what they told her. That's what they told me anyway.
Well, with mine, I was quite shocked to turn into a very tall brunette. And I thought, well, she's pretty, but she never got a credit. I always felt a bit sorry for her. But Gary Tunnicliffe, who did the makeup on later Hellraiser films, came up with this concept that maybe the female Cenobite was a nun. And I turned that, I again wrote a short story as Nico did for the Hellbound Hearts anthology. And she was a sex-starved nun that wanted power, and she was sick
a
of
nun with very bad habits.
And so she calls forth the order of the gash so she can seek power and domination and stuff and sick, perverted sexual practices. And she was called Sister Celise. I gave her a name. Celise is a, you'll probably see a little star attraction in the Da Vinci Code, because the assassin wears a Celise around his thigh. It's actually, Opus Dei uses it's a metal thing with little spikes going in and tighten it to remind yourself of Christ's suffering. So I thought, that's a good name for a Cenobite. You know, so that I didn't, at the time there was no backstory for my character either. I think that you had one, or did you?
I did,
Oh,
indeed. So,
yeah.
yes, I mean, my backstory had already been established at the beginning of Hellbound, so when it was a different process for Pinhead, because it kind of became quasi-human and all around the edges to save Kirsty and Tiffany. But then, in fact, theoretically in Bloodline. Although Dimension then, in their infinite wisdom, decided to screw up the whole point of the ending of Bloodline, which is, as Pete Atkins had written it, was that Merchant knows he's not going to have any children, deliberately lures Pinhead onto the space station to end the feud and end the bloodline and destroy them both. And the best ending was that the space station turns into the Lament configuration, which is spinning in space, and a hand came into frame and picked up the Lament configuration. You travelled down with it, and it was put down on Le Marchand's bench, and you're back at the beginning. So the whole thing is a constant time loop, and that's a great ending. So then Dimension had to have the space people escape, have to have a happy ending, of course. And then they did this thing where the shuttle is going down to Earth and a single pin comes spinning after it down towards Earth. And I saw that and I thought, well, okay, that's also a cool ending. But then the version I think as released, you just see the shuttle going to Earth and then the credits roll, and that's the end of the movie, and it's very disappointing. I'm about to die again. Well, I say I, but Clive, of course, is about to give Pinhead a literary death in the Scarlet Gospels, which is being published in spring, in May this year. I've just been asked if I will write a foreword for it, which I've said yes. Maybe I'll get a chance to read it first. So Pinhead is going to die all over again.
That's good.
We all die. I guess we all die.
Well, one of the great things about horror films is that you can say, what's death? You know?
Well, you kept coming back like a,
Like a bad smell.
Turning up like a bad penny, I think the American expression is. But you die at the end of 2, and then you come back in 3, 4.
I didn't die at the end of 2.
You just zapped into dematerialized?
I became something different to what I had been before. I was absorbed into the Pillar of Souls, which is where you find me at the beginning of Hellraiser 3.
Of course. Remember? Of course.
Oh, that old Pillar of Souls thing.
The old Pillar of Souls, and then you suck the skin off a couple of girls and swallow them, and you come back to life. It's as easy as that. So if any of you ever find yourselves trapped in a Pillar of Souls, That's the thing to do. Skin a couple of women, swallow them, and you'll be fine.
Did you just say
It works every time.
suck the skin off a couple of girls?
Yeah.
Is that some new sexual practice I haven't come across?
It's not a sexual practice. It's a dietary. It's like a herbal supplement.
That wouldn't have worked for
Fish oil
Frank.
and the skin of a couple of girls every morning. That's the secret of a long, healthy, happy life.
But that wouldn't have worked for Frank. He had to suck the skin off a guy.
I'm not going there.
See, that was one of the, that was one of the things that I loved so much about Hellraiser 1 was Julia so lusted after this guy that she went and picked up innocent men, hit them over the head with a hammer, and watched them, her ex-lover who had no skin, suck their essence out. And I went, wow, that's dedication. It's just, you gotta love a woman who does that for her man, don't you?
It's very true. Doug, we had talked in Chicago about the after-production work on your voice, and you had a pretty interesting story how Pinhead's voice is pretty much different through the entire series. You want to tell us about that?
Okay, well, people ask me a lot whether it's my voice in Hellraiser. It is. I deliver the lines in a lower pitch to my normal speaking voice. And then I went to Delaney Studios in Soho in London because they wanted to re-record all my lines clean so that they could play with it. I don't know exactly what they did. I've always thought they maybe slowed it a little bit, maybe pitch shifted it down a little bit, maybe got contracted, put a bit of echo on it, whatever it was. They did that. That's Hellraiser. In 88, I guess, I went back to Delaney Studios to record all my lines from Hellbound. Same guys in the same studio. And I went in and they said, hi Doug, you know what? We wish we'd known there was going to be a sequel. Because we'd have made notes. We have no idea what we did to make you sound the way you did in Hellraiser. So they had to start from scratch all over again and do whatever they did until they thought they had a pretty decent match to what they had in Hellraiser. Then Hellraiser 3 was shot in the States for the first time, in North Carolina. And reshoots and post-production work was done in Los Angeles. So I'm told they want me to go into a studio in LA to re-record my lines so they can play with them. And I walk in and the guy says to me, hey, hi Doug, so what is it we need to do to make you sound like Pinhead? Me? I don't know, I'm just the actor. So unless you call Pinewood and they still have production notes that might tell you, I have no clue. So they made it up from scratch for Hellraiser 3, and I think it was different post-production people that worked on Bloodline. It may have been the same people for Part 5, certainly was different for Part 6 because we shot that in Vancouver. And 7 and 8 were shot in Romania, so Christ help us. So it's been more or less, it's been reinvented pretty much from movie to movie to movie.
It's actually a cool story. So let's talk about the progression of your characters from the Hellbound Heart to the Hellraiser movie. Obviously, the name Pinhead never came up in the Hellbound Heart story. He was kind of described as an androgynous figure. So how would the progression go from, obviously, the written word that Clive did to the movie that he directed?
Well, I only found out afterwards for Chatterer that part of the inspiration, the idea of the revealing the teeth in this back was based on a conversation I'd had with Clive a couple of years before we made Hellraiser. Because I told him that when I was 19, they had to do a major operation on my face, where they moved the top jaw around and used bits of bone for my hip and basically remade my face. And during that operation, it was all done through my mouth. So they peeled back my upper lip and pulled back. No, I'm doing it, I'm cool. So I did that. Pulled it back. More or less what you see with Chatterer. using hooks and holding it in place. And I just had that conversation with him, talking one day. And then it was only after the movie, he said, did you not realize that's where Chatterer comes from? That's where the image of Chatterer comes from. Talking about experience. And then he came up with the whole thing of the eyes and so on. When we originally thought about it, or the original modelling, the teeth were sharp rather than the human teeth, and then they replaced that because it made him look too fish-like. So he wanted to make him look more like that. So
they didn't know what the budget was going to be for the Cenobite makeups to start with, and I think they hired Nick especially thinking he wouldn't mind if they hadn't got the budget, but they just kind of recreate that whole thing, just kind of slit his face a little bit and pull it back, because he's been through it once, so it would be okay.
Yeah, I'm surprised they did.
And with me, they were just going to feed me a lot and shave my head. That would have been a cheaper way of doing it. And I don't know about the female, really.
Well, I think the female, in the original novella, I think the lead Cenobite was female.
Absolutely.
And thank you. And I thought it was interesting, but at the time in the 80s, you already had two very strong female characters, Julia and calling her Ashley, Kirsty. And they probably thought, it's a bit too much femininity in this, so let's make him male. And Clive came up with your concept of the Cenobite, lead Cenobite, didn't you?
It just occurred to me that I've never had that conversation with Clive, so I don't know why the shift of emphasis from the Hellbound Heart to the movie. Of course, all of us in the movie have no names, as the Cenobites have no names in the Hellbound Heart. The principal difference for me is in the Hellbound Heart, the Cenobite that is Pinhead is described as having a jewel pin, so it's very definitely a pin with a jewel on the tip of it. The gridiron pattern is described, but he also has pins in his tongue, which might have made speaking slightly complicated. So, I'll hear your whole
Which, interestingly, is what happened to me.
Might have become slightly less. The transfer of lines.
I did have lines in Hellraiser 1, but then they stuck these horrific false dentures on top of my own teeth. And when it came to my lines, they were all plosives. They were all P's and B's. Then perhaps we prefer you was my line, impossible was my line. But if you can't put your lips together, you can't say it. So when it came to filming it, perhaps we prefer you, impossible. And they took all my lines away, gave them to the female.
Also, Pinhead, significantly in the Hellbound Heart, is described as having a light and breathy voice, like that of an excited girl. So now I have a mouthful of pins, and I'm saying, so I was kind of glad of that shift. He also had bells sewn into the skin around the back of his neck, so which in the movie I think might have been slightly ridiculous, because everywhere he went he would have been jingle bells.
Well, I remember at one point in a scene we got together. I remember that somebody told me that you wanted to take some pins so you can kiss me without a pin. Is that true?
What in the film? I'm lost.
Yeah.
Did you ever kiss her in the movie?
I don't think so.
No.
Because the pins would
You
have
could not kiss me
Yes.
without a pin.
Yes, but we didn't have a screen kiss, did we? Pinhead and Angelique?
No, we just had a scratch.
Okay.
What I love about the female Cenobite, because obviously I wasn't in the first film, and they had to modify the makeup for the second one because my neck was not as long and lovely as Grace Kirby's. I've sort of fulfilled the role that Sigourney Weaver does in Galaxy Quest, when she repeats everything the computer says. I sort of, first entrance, that was actually my first day on set, was, to come on and confront little Tiffany. And You say,
What do I say? No.
no. And he says,
No.
no, you say.
Yes. Maybe.
It's not hands that calls us.
It is not hands that call us.
But desire.
It is Peter.
And he's getting out of his lederhosen.
You know, I do have a tendency of sort of even time to play, I think is what you said in the first film. I can say it again in the second one. And so it is kind of a bit of a, you know, echo kind of part. But,
Now, the Cenobites, as you said, were mysterious, but you were all bound by a set of rules, which sort of added to the complexity of your character, that differentiated yourselves between Freddy and Jason. Sort of talk about that, playing that type of killer.
Well, I've always said, certainly in the first two movies, Pinhead's not really a killer, and he's not a typical monster in the horror film. Approaching the movie, that was my shorthand to myself. I'm going to play the monster in a horror movie. How cool is that? But in fact, reading the script and as filming went on, the monsters in the film, of course, are Frank and Julia, and really Pinhead and the Cenobites are there as almost a kind of impartial referee of what's going on, and to confront Pinhead and the Cenobites, you have to first of all discover the existence of the lament configuration. You have to track one down. You have to figure out how to make it work, and even then, before any soul tearing may take place, Pinhead wants to stop and have pass the time of day and find out a bit about you. So it's a complicated process that you go through before you get anywhere near the hooks and chains.
and make sure your desire quotient is high enough.
It is not Hans Peter that. It is not Hans that. It's not just the process of opening the box that is going to condemn you. It's what's in your head and in your heart in that process. That changes for Pinhead when he gets to part 3. But part of the whole thing that was intended to drive Hell on Earth was that Pinhead is now free of the rules and able to operate as a free agent. Then he's kind of rule bound again. Bloodline is different because we're going backwards in time and forwards in time from where we were in the first few movies.
I mean, when Clive first talked to me about playing Chatterer, he described him as the family dog who would actually do all the attacking. Because Chatterer in the first movie is the only Cenobite who actually touches a human being. So the original concept was that he was going to be very agile, leaping around the place, and then by the time they put me in a leather costume, which is basically like wearing a leather corset, so I couldn't bend, do anything much, walk or raise my arms. I couldn't actually hear, speak, or see when I was wearing the costume.
It caused some complications because Nick, being the thoroughly dedicated method actor that he is, we had to have a dog basket on set so that Nick could curl up with a bow between shots.
You had your kibbles.
Yeah. Clearing up after him wasn't so nice either.
And we had to take it in turns to take him out for a walk around the set. Really annoying.
But it's all those years of work still works. Can you just stand up for me, Nick? Just watch this. Sit!
And roll over.
Tickly tummy!
Next question before they. Yeah.
I was looking to see where that was going to go. So, if you would just talk about the difference between filming the first and the second film and working with Tony Randall and Clive Barker.
From noticed.
We had a different director? Did we? Yeah, no, we did. I know we did. For me, personally, the main difference was that I gouged holes in the makeup so I could see a tiny little bit, because I couldn't stand another 3 months of being blind. It didn't really help, to be honest, because I could only see a tiny little bit, but I could at least read a newspaper when we weren't filming, which was most of the time.
And I persuaded the makeup department it would be a really good idea if they remodeled Chatterer, so I could actually see in this one. That would be very cool. Of course, I didn't actually use the footage of it, apart from the very, very end, where it was magically seen. Because it was, you know, we laughed about it. It was great. It was tough. It was actually really tough. Not, you know, 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
You know, so it was. My experience was 12 hours. 2 days they didn't film me. They just left me 12 hours and they could see, and they didn't actually use me.
One of the big differences early on was actually the script, because the script for Hellraiser was very much set in one house. It was very character driven, whereas the Hellraiser 2 script started out as kind of character driven, and then about halfway through it just became a list of special effects that were going to be happening.
Also, everybody was expecting Andy Robinson to come on set, and I remember getting what they call pink pages, which is, you know, the changes, and because something fell through, I'm not quite sure what the reason was. Anyway, but it basically he didn't like the terms and stuff, and so he decided not to. And there's poor Pete going, we're never going to see Andy Robinson, so how are we going to work out this huge change? Because the whole reason Kirsty is running through those endless hallways of hell is to find her dad. So I felt personally there was probably a little bit too much running around hell of the two girls, but it's because people were frantically thinking, how are we going to fix this problem? And I think they you know, the ending is pretty satisfying.
Running down the same piece of set most of the time.
Yeah. But I remember, you just reminded me of the story, Ken Cranham, when he was made into Channard Cenobite, it took him 6 hours, that makeup, and then getting him into the costume. And he's sitting around, and he's
I just found a dog hair on my boot. I thought it was one of me.
You know, he's got a sort of rather lugubrious, sad face anyway, and in his Channard makeup, he just looked. And the first assistant came in and said, "I'm so sorry, Ken, we can't use you today." And he's like going, "Please, just anything. Let me just get on set." I said, "No, I'm sorry, we're not going to get you today." So we had to spend, you know, whatever it was, 2 hours to get the makeup off and costume on. So.
Valentina, talk a little bit about how you got involved with Blood.
I just went to a casting, and I got the script, I read it, and I loved the part of Angelique. I thought so many colors she had, and this part demon, part human, and not resolved into her heart and her mind, you know, split in there, and that was totally interesting, and still the suffering and the pain and the lust and all the things that she had to go through. That was amazing. I was really afraid of being here. I will tell you, like every time I saw it on the set, I was like freezing, petrified.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, I tell you now.
You obviously didn't see when he was wearing his glasses, smoking his cigarette.
Anyway, I thought it was a nice character, Angelique. I really, I think is one of my favorite characters I've ever done so far. I hope we can do more Hellraisers. I would love Angelique to get the power now. Finally.
Bring it on, bring it on.
So as actors and actresses, what were your favorite kill scenes or death scenes in the film?
Well, I can tell you my least favourite, which was mine when they drove a 12-inch rusty foot into the roof of my mouth.
But that really happened.
That really happened. that really happened in the making of Hellbath, and the death scene when I'm spinning around on the pillow. Just beforehand, you're basically standing there, and it's the classic thing. You have the tentacle in your hand, and the way they sell this gag is you just go, oh, and throw your head back and open your mouth. And as I did that, then there was a 12-inch rusty hook on the end of the chain that went literally up into the roof of my mouth. I didn't enjoy that. And what everyone got really pissed off was that the camera just panned up at the wrong moment, which is what he was supposed to do. He was doing exactly what nobody knew was going to happen. Because obviously if they'd filmed it, they would have filmed the movie. But yeah, so that was an interesting afternoon.
I think my favorite, I've got two favorite death scenes. In Hellraiser 1, I just love the way that, as I said before, Julia's whacking these guys on the head. That's very cool. And then on the second movie, it's when she rips out, it is Frank's heart, and then goes, nothing personal, babe. Great line. So.
Mine's going to be Andy's Jesus wept. I think that's beautiful. I was thinking about that the other day. How did they film that? They must have had him on hooks and things, and then they had
for about 2.5 hours.
They had, yeah, and it was fantastic to watch it go. I mean, there were kind of big chains that were attached to him, and then they came in very close with the delicate chains. Jesus wept, I think, Andy actually improvised on the spot. It's his improvised line.
I just love the moment of having seen the film on the big screen recently, is that you can really tell when it's Frank wearing Andy Robinson's skin, and that is the genius of Andy Robinson's acting, because he's such a milquetoast throughout most of Hellraiser 1, and then when Frank kills him and he comes in wearing the Andy Robinson skin. I mean, it's just, you could see this like demonic glint in his eye that hadn't been there before.
And it's clever, and it takes some courage, I think, for an actor to be quite as pathetic as Andy was as Larry. I mean, you just want to slap him around the face all the time for being so completely pathetic. What Andy is doing is giving himself everywhere to go. He's got all the room in the world to play with once he gets to be Frank in Larry's skin, and he is a wonderful, wonderful actor. It's a shame he didn't come back for Hellbound.
So we've read that Clive had to make several cuts to Hellraiser, the MPAA, and things like that, which I'm sure you guys probably don't have answers to. But what are your thoughts on censorship of Hellraiser and censorship in general?
Well, I've said before. I mean, I don't. In terms of the cuts the MPAA asked for, I'm not sure what precisely those were. I think Clive was fairly pleased that he'd been treated fairly kindly. I know when it went to the UK and the BBFC, which is the British equivalent of the MPAA, British Board of Film Certification, I think it was then, they've now confessed and called themselves censors. There was one principal little cut they wanted, which goes back to Julia's killings. There was one shot apparently where she had ploughed the hammer into back of somebody's guy's head. And there was a cut back to her, and she had a half smile on her face. They wanted that removed because it suggested that Julia might be deriving some sexual satisfaction from beating guys' brains out with a hammer, which in a movie devoted to sadomasochistic sexuality is a bit to me. My feelings generally are, I've said this many times, I think we have, I'm opposed to censorship fundamentally. I think it's an evil we probably have to live with, but it's always struck me as odd that we seem to have things completely back to front. We are very careful about cutting and censoring for the cinema, where you have control over your audience, and then we release uncut versions of everything to DVD, where you have absolutely no control over your audience and who's accessing the information, or who's getting to see the movies. always seems to me that is slightly back to front. If you're going to put the uncensored version out there, surely the place to put it is in the cinema where you control who's got access to it. Studios won't allow that. It's one of the reasons we are saddled increasingly with PG-13 horror films, is because the studios want the kids in to see it because they want their money. NC-17 is considered to be commercial suicide in the States. And I know when the Hellraiser Halloween crossover was talked about, I talked to Clive about that, and he said, I've had one note from the Weinsteins. This will not be a sadomasochistic movie. You take sadomasochism out of Hellraiser, you have nothing. But if you're going to put sadomasochism in, you can't have a PG-13 certificate.
The interesting thing as well at the time, the big British film critic at the time was a guy called Barry Norman. He wasn't that fond of Hellraiser, but he did make a really good point about censorship. He showed one evening, he showed a clip from a porn movie, and then he showed a clip from an extremely violent movie. And he was pointing out, I said, I can't show you anything much more of this porn movie because it's sex. The violence I can show you. People are going to kill, ripped to pieces. That's okay. That's good for general entertainment. But sex isn't. And he said, that is crazy. People making love to each other is somehow deemed unacceptable.
This is one thing that I just do have a bit of a problem with, because, you know, people get over it. We all have to do it, or otherwise there would be no human race. So I find it interesting that there can be so much violence, really horrific violence, normally towards women. But heaven forfend that you should see a loving couple making love, or and even just an unloving couple having lustful sex, you know. And instead we get lumbered with 55 degrees of boring, you know, vanilla S&M with this gray thing.
I think actually,
A gray thing.
There's a grey thing in this movie.
Oh,
So hence in Sweden, you could go and see hardcore pornography in cinemas. They cut the heck out of horror films at the same time. I think it's shifted now to some extent. I went to see Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ. And I came out offering a silent prayer of thanks to Mr. Gibson, because one of my many responses to the movie is that nobody could ever again censor a horror film for too much blood and too much gore and too much senseless violence, because Mel Gibson rewrote the book on senseless violence in Passion of the Christ. You know, you get 20 minutes of him being whipped and scourged with the cat o' nine tails, and it's helpfully demonstrated that if you hit this whip into a wooden table, it locks tight. Now you spend 20 minutes whipping this guy. You're gouging chunks of flesh off his back. He's bleeding out. And then we come to the moment when he's crucified, and God's a bit pissed off with this, and the clouds are coming over, and the Roman centurions decide to scarper and, just for good measure, stick the spear in his side, and this power shower of blood comes pouring out of Christ's side, and the centurion has almost got his loofah out, and he's almost, you know, he's luxuriating in this shower of blood. So he is responsible for making the most gratuitously violent film ever made. So,
but they showed it in churches.
Horror films have a clear run.
They showed it in churches, though, because it's religious.
It's about Jesus, so you can get away with it. Bullshit.
I was surprised this morning. I was like watching TV, and I was like, watch War Series 1. And I was like, oh my God, it's like, what's going on? What about love? What about sex?
Well, when I first moved to England, every Sunday they used to have something called the World at War, and it's Sunday afternoon, and you have your fat Sunday lunch, and then you watch the horrors of death, Auschwitz, and it's just sort of, oh my God! But of course, you know, the English, very rightly so, because you know, fought bravely and powerfully in that war, and
I think Americans and indeed Canadians did too.
We did, hurrah! But no, because you know you're fighting a nasty, nasty. It's a little bit of an understatement. But no, I mean this is a question we could talk about till the cows come home about violence and sex. But
interestingly, you've got a picture, I think, at your table, Barbie, of the Japanese picture of the Cenobites, and somebody has gone through in Japan in the 80s and taken every bit of blood out of the Cenobites pictures. My wound's gone. The aprons are all cleaned up. They're all shiny and lovely. And
this is the Japanese, and they love gory horror films. But they did that to us, and then I got this picture from an Irish friend, and I said, "Oh, where's our gore? Where's my wound?" And he said, "Oh, I can put it back for you." And so they're come to the table. You'll see we're re-gored.
We have time for 2 questions from the audience. Anybody?
I have a question. How does it make you feel knowing that you are in everybody's nightmares, not just on the TV, but you are in their nightmares too? That your face is what they see.
I'm hoping you mean this in makeup.
No. Yes, that's what I mean. In the makeup. I mean that, but it's a good thing and it can be a bad thing.
I actually do find it surprising. A gentleman came up to me at the table yesterday. I don't know if you're in the audience. I'm telling you a story, and he said it was Kinski from Nightbreed that had given him nightmares, and I was like, really? I bet Kinski's the nice guy. Kinski, compared to Eloquent, and compared to Chattering, he said no, because he just dreamt of Kinski chasing him with those big semicircular knives, chasing him down corridors. It's surprising. I do find it surprising. Kind of flattering, I guess.
Yes, it's kind of cool. I mean, I have a lot of people saying, "You gave me my first nightmares," and first instinct is kind of feel responsible and slightly apologetic for it. But, what the hell? No, that's mission accomplished. Yeah. But of course, it's not my face. It's the makeup. And the other point is, it's got nothing to do with me, and it's got nothing to do with what was in the film. What you're dreaming about, the great truism about dreams, is it's about what the Pinhead and the Cenobites and the experience of Hellraiser means to you and your unconscious mind.
And how your brain synthesized it into something that is personal to you. I was speaking as a short, blonde Canadian person, to find that people were scared of me, because I got bullied to bits when I was a kid, because I just wasn't long enough, is that, wow, and it's that moment that Doug described so well, and, I first looked into the mirror and saw myself in the Cenobite makeup. I went, wow, I don't know whether to feel powerful or to cry, because it is a shocking look.
It is very shocking. Very shocking.
You're sexy as heck as a Cenobite. Yeah.
But always there is that part of you that can dream of evil scenes or evil images, and you also have the possibility of the other side to dream angels or God or lightning or whatever that. So you have to make sometimes the choice of what side you want to be.
I do think there's an interesting thing too, which is about the universality of cinema. This is happening probably in the last 100 years for the first time. Probably, with the exception of religion, the major religions, there probably hasn't been another time where this kind of imagery gets inside the heads of so many people.
It's very powerful.
Simultaneously, and it is powerful stuff, and it is slightly scary, and it's rather exciting that we all get to share this same symbolic language that cinema gives us.
But it's also sexy. I mean, with the exception of probably Nick and I, but certainly the three of you, you're scary, but you're also quite sexual characters.
Damn it, Chatter is sexy.
And Freud would say anything in the dream would have some kind of sexual nature to start with.
Chatter is a penis with teeth. What do you mean he's not sexy?
All right, one more from the audience.
You mean you're a dick?
Are there any more questions?
Yeah. For a while back, before Revelations came out, I heard a lot of talk about. Yeah, see, that's the reaction I expected, and the same reaction that I had. I heard, Doug was not going to be playing Pinhead again, and I was really disappointed about it, but kind of excited about the idea of a new Hellraiser film. And when it came out, I was obviously very disappointed. I just want to know what your thoughts are on the film, the man's portrayal of Pinhead, and do you think he'll ever reprise the role again?
I was offered the movie. I turned it down for a variety of reasons. Long story short, I got a phone call in middle of July. I think this is either 2010 or 2011. Not even from Dimension Films, but from a third party, explaining that someone in the legal department at Dimension Films had just discovered that if they didn't have a movie, this is the middle of July, if they didn't have a movie in front of the cameras by September 3rd, they were going to lose the rights to the franchise. So it's kick-ass and scramble to get this movie written and prepped and cast and crewed and in front of the camera between the middle of July and the beginning of September, which is 6 weeks. It's not enough time. I can't do it. Now, my fundamental feeling is that Dimension Films have been nothing but bad for the franchise from the day they got involved. So my first reaction was, well, if the Weinsteins care so little about their baby that they haven't even noticed what's going on with the fine print, it would be their major contract with Disney. They were losing Children of the Corn at the same time, which is why they quickly made another Children of the Corn movie as well. If they care that little, hey, maybe they should lose the rights to the franchise and they should go to somebody who gives a damn, was my basic. They were calling in favours all over the place, and I frankly didn't see why I should be prepared to take one up the Gary Glitter to save the Weinstein skin. So I'm already very, and they had an absolutely minuscule budget, a ridiculously small budget, which seemed to me to be the amount of money that the Weinsteins were prepared to spend to retain the rights. I did ask to see the script. That confirmed me in my belief that I wasn't going to do the film, so I turned it down. I haven't seen it. I've seen the trailer. I haven't seen the movie, not because I'm trying to avoid it. It's there on Netflix. I have no excuse. It's on my list. I haven't got around to it. The guy who played Pinhead, good luck to him. Nothing bad to say to him. He's an actor earning a living who was offered the chance to play Pinhead. Why in the hell would he say no? So I don't offer any judgment on him or anybody involved in making Revelations, because nobody sets out to make a bad movie deliberately. It just happens that way sometimes. But it didn't seem to me that this was a serious attempt to either kickstart the franchise or revive it. Would I play it again in the right circumstances? Sure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Hellraiser. Give them a hand.
Thank you, guys.